Hey guys, it's Misty from the Book Rat, and it's time to take a look at my favorite reads of 2016. I'm sorry this is going up a little later than intended. I had originally tried to record it on my phone and got about 4 books in before my phone freaked out and said I was out of storage. And not only did that mean that I had no room to record it, but I also would have had to completely re-record everything because with the whole no computer thing, I've basically got to do everything in one shot. But I've ordered a new computer. It should be here in about a week or so, so recording this the traditional way, and hopefully everything will go according to plan and I'll be able to put it up. Would you stop? Could you just not? Cat is playing with a binder clip. Anyway, that is why this is going up a little bit late. You're probably sick of these type of videos by now, but I don't care. I'm gonna still share my favorites. So with no further ado, and in no particular order, here are my favorite reads of 2016. I'm going to kick it off with the most recent read and what is probably my favorite of the bunch, just a stellar way to end the year, and that is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This is sort of magical fantasy, somewhat a fairy tale retelling, though I don't think it's directly of any fairy tale, but it kind of deals with Polish folklore and Baba Yaga, and it's just stellar. Just across the board. Fantastically plotted, great characters, great world building, interesting and unusual, somewhat magical realist, kind of earthy elements, and there was just never a moment that I didn't love this. It was exactly what I needed, and I will be rereading this. I can guarantee it. Up next I have a comic series, and this was kind of the year of comics for me. I read probably more comics than I did prose books, and loved a lot of them. This one is one that people have been recommending to me for a very, very long time, and I finally got around to reading it, and that is Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. This has seriously been recommended to me by numerous people. I just kept intending to read it, and I think I even checked it out from the library once and then just didn't get to it in time before I had to go back, and it had been kind of on the back burner since then, and this year I discovered Hoopla, which I'm in love with, and that gave me the chance to read it, and oh my god, I'm sorry to everyone who recommended it to me. It should not have taken me so long. You were absolutely right. This was fantastic. Everything about it, fantastic. I loved every minute. I love every character. I was about to mutiny when I thought something happened to Lion Cat, and if anything ever does happen to Friendo, I will mutiny. Like, I will find you, Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. I will find you. So even though it's kind of bad that I waited this long to read it, I'm also kind of glad, because that meant that I was able to binge read 5 volumes and only had to wait for the 6th one, and even then only had to wait for a month or 2. So that was a highlight of this year. Loved every volume. They are all in my top books. Speaking of comics, another one I discovered through Hoopla this year is Hexed by Michael Allen Nelson, and I think it's illustrated by Emma Rios. I'm not sure if she's the one who does the color too, but regardless, I love the coloring in this. This is a great one kind of for fans of Buffy the Vampire Slayer or any of that sort of genre TV. It hits a lot of the same notes. It has fantastic main character, a lot of the historical and mythological elements that make up the interesting things that go on. But across the board, it just never really hit a false note with me. I could have read it into infinity. Like, it's a complete series, it's over, and that breaks my heart a little bit. When I reached the last issue, I was a little crushed, and I was hoping there would be a spin-off or news that they were continuing it or something, because I just need more in my life of these characters, of this art, of the style, of the humor, of the darkness. Everything about it I loved. Speaking of darker books, I read 2 towards the beginning of this year. Well, I read a number that were darker towards the beginning of this year, but 2 really stood out, and they were After the Woods by Kim Savage, which is a really, really interesting look at the kind of gray area in a very dark story, and who really is the villain and who really is the hero. Is there any such thing? You know, who's in the wrong, who's in the right. It really delves into a lot of interesting, morally ambiguous areas and really knocked it out of the park, especially for a debut, and I am eagerly anticipating Kim's follow-up, Beautiful Broken Girls, which I believe comes out next month, and I will be reading very soon. And then the other one, kind of in that same vein, is in this little evidence bag, and that is The Darkest Corners by Kara Thomas. Again, this one looks at the gray areas and sort of preconceived notions, both you as the reader and, you know, characters, people in general's preconceived notions. In fact, both of those do this. They play off of what people expect to happen and the narratives people build, and then contrast that with how messy everything actually is. You know, nothing is ever cut and dry. So both of those really knocked it out of the park for me, and I think were the standouts of the dark, gritty books that I read this year, and that kind of followed that same trend. I think these two were the best of the bunch. Both of those were contemporary, as is I See Reality, which is a short story collection. This has like 12, I think? Yeah, 12 different contemporary realistic stories told by 12 different people, and every single one of them nailed it. I think there might have been one that wasn't my favorite but was still good, but honestly, I don't know that I've read an anthology by different authors where I've liked every story and didn't really feel like any were complete duds, or even that there were only just one or two standouts and then kind of, you know, middle of the road, good, but nothing memorable. These were all really good. And it's a great way to discover some new authors and try out their style, so this I highly recommend. I've talked about this next one recently and how I just love a good bit of weird, dark, strange offness, and this had that in spades. And it's Vasa Night by Sarah Porter. This again uses the story of Baba Yaga. You'll already know I'm a fan of that. And it was just weird and dark and ambiguous and gruesome, and it just really worked on a lot of levels for me. I do think that it won't be everyone's cup of tea, and I can see why some people wouldn't like it, but worked across the board for me. Loved it. And I would definitely like to see more. I don't know if there will be more, but I would like that. We're getting towards the end. A few more comics and one more book, but of the comics, we have The Nameless City by Faith Erin Hicks. This was great. The sequel's coming out this year and I can't wait. It builds a place and a time and a history really well, and I loved the characters, I love their interactions, and it's just something you can fall into, and it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. The color, the style, everything about it just really worked for me. Another one that really worked for me is Rat Queens Volume 1 by Curtis J. Weeb. Volume 1 worked for me. It really went downhill after that, and by this most recent volume, I'm actually pretty irritated with the series. Volume 1 kind of hit that sweet spot. It's definitely not for kids, but it's funny and nerdy and fantastical and a lot of fun, and the illustration in the first volume is just stellar. The capturing of expressions is kind of like nothing else I've seen in comics, and I really, really, really enjoyed that. It starts to tank after that and became much more disappointing, and now it's kind of on indefinite hiatus, and I don't know if there's going to be any more, and I don't know if that really bothers me. So the rest of it not so much, but Volume 1 Rat Queens definitely on the list. Up next we have You Were Here by Corey McCarthy, which I feel like I didn't talk about enough when I read this. It is contemporary and it weaves together 5 or 6 different narrations in one of the most skillful ways that I've seen in a long time. Each voice is distinct, each style is distinct, and they come together in the most amazing way, and I loved this and really should have talked about it more. So if that hasn't been on your radar, put it there. It's there now. So good. I have some slight honorable mentions. The first is Six of Crows. I've talked about this before, and I think I put it in last year's favorites. I couldn't remember if I read this at the end of 2015 or started it at the end of 2015, finished it at the beginning of 2016, but regardless, I feel like it hasn't been talked about enough from me. I mean, everyone else has talked about it because it's amazing. So I had to put this in here because it's incredible. I have Crooked Kingdom, but I haven't read it yet, but I keep hearing little bits and pieces that make me feel like I'm gonna be heartbroken, so kind of a little nervous to do that. And the other honorable mention is only because I'm not done with it yet, but I have a feeling it's going to end up in my top books, and that is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, which so far so good, but god damn, this book is long. That is all for my absolute favorites of 2016, but I do have a whole stack of honorable mentions that I feel like just couldn't be crammed into this already long video. So if you would like to see my honorable mentions, Stay tuned, I will be posting that soon. And if you would like to see my list of the most disappointing and least favorite books of 2016, let me know, because I've got some of those, and I'm willing to talk about them. But that is all for now. Let me know your favorites of the year in the comments. Until next time, that's all for now. Thank you guys for watching, and happy reading.